Hello viewers, once again we are with you, and this session is being conducted as part of our security leadership discussion. This series has been conceived with the objective that it will benefit practicing security professionals. Every discussion is coming out with a theme which security professionals must know about, and their knowledge should be of that level that they are capable, they are confident, and they conduct themselves as true security professionals. The tagline of International Council of Industrial Security and Safety Management is "Let's professionalize the professionals." With this aim and purpose, today we are going to discuss insider threat, the hidden dimensions. With us, Captain Garry is present as a speaker. Garry, it is my immense pleasure and privilege to welcome you for this discussion. We have been known to each other for a very long time, and I, without bias and personal preference, rate you as topmost security professionals. And you act in a field which is often mistaken to be something as conventional investigation agency is kind of stereotyped. For viewers, let me introduce Captain Garry, who acts as president to IIRIS, about which he himself will make brief mention. He is Six Sigma Green Belt and a risk management professional par excellence, with vast experience in setting up and monitoring ERM, intelligence network, governance compliances, and risk mitigation frameworks. He has earned unique understanding and aptitude to seamlessly stitch strategy on ground implementation. Apart from his technical expertise, Garry imbibes in himself the quest for innovation, training, and communication. He has innovated new practices and written papers on subjects such as NPA management, risk management, white collar crimes, etc. Garry is also state councillor of ICISS, which is holding this series of security leadership discussion. As security professional, let us start understanding what is insider threat and how this is a very potent, very damaging, and challenging threat for security professionals. Anyone who is involved in security management, risk management, must know very clearly what it involves and how to mitigate. Garry, before I request you to make your introductory comment, I wish to share with our viewers that Garry is a sword of honor and a proud paratrooper.
Thank you, sir.
Garry, over to you. Let's hear from you what you understand, what you would like our members to understand about insider threat.
Thank you, sir. Very kind words. And coming from you, they're very, very personally motivating for me. Thank you so much. And I really will like to appreciate the way ICISS has handled this knowledge, which is a collective knowledge within ICISS and outside, and made it reach the right levels. Not only these leadership forums are great benefit to the complete fraternity, but also online certifications, which was originally a training come online, has been now further developed for online certification during COVID. It's one of the first genuine professional qualifications in India. So thank you for your vision, sir, that ICISS has been really doing this great job for the complete industry fraternity. Coming to our topic today, insider threat, personally, I believe this is definitely the biggest threat that any business or organization faces. If we demean this threat, it's just because maybe we do not understand it, or we have not made enough efforts to see that how it has been impacting all of us. So if I go to a bit of examples before even I say what exactly insider threat might be, and these examples will make it very clear that it is basically somebody who is inside you and ends up going against you. We'll discuss about more reasons and other details later. And it can be so potent that some of the people who've logged in from India definitely will know that Lord Rama, being God himself, and Ravana was treated as demon. And in their fight, whatever even the God was doing, he was not able to find success unless he got inside information from Vibhishana, who gave him the detail that where exactly to hit and how exactly to hit. And you can imagine, if your defenses are well built, even God has to find an insider before he beats you. So that's how it is. And I'm very sure even people who have logged in outs of India, they have heard the stories of Trojan horse for sure. And you can imagine that if the forts and the walls and the warriors were so strong that for months and months nothing could happen to them, but just one horse. You can imagine how many people went inside the horse to penetrate that gate and the door, but they could create that havoc. That is the potential of insider threat. So when we talk about insider threat, uh, maybe in a casual definition, not that need to write it out like a thing, but it is basically a threat that will emerge from anyone who is inside our system. And when we say it is a threat, definitely there is somebody with malicious intention. That intention and that particular individual or other details end up causing this insider threat. Who all these insiders can be? Obviously, your employees. They are definitely the biggest, generally, uh, let's say, critical wise, the biggest asset that you hold. Even your contract resources. You may say, no, no, they're not my employees, but they're working inside your organizations. They may be doing technical work, they may be doing housekeeping, or they may be doing the biggest possible assignment that you can or outsource ever. Contract resources, all the vendors who may come in. At the same time, I will also like to say, even your former employees continue to be insider threat of some kind because they have possessed huge amount of information of assets, processes, criticality when they were part of the organization. So they also end up being some bit of insider threat. And something which is very new, and I only coined this term very recently, is a virtual insider. And what does this virtual insider mean? It basically means the ability of someone who's not inside the organization but able to achieve intelligence that can almost act as an insider. Why are we worried about insiders? Because the amount of information they have, the amount of process they are aware of, they can cause havoc. Similarly, these days, especially in the corporate warfare scenario, there are so many virtual insiders these organizations face that it is very, very challenging. So even these virtual insiders are a challenge and we need to worry about. So even I'm very sure one of the biggest data, if we ever want to see, is the US retail data, because it's so well organized, very data driven, and you will be aware that they lose few trillion dollars every year just because of inventory shrinkage. And this inventory shrinkage is part of theft, part of uh, inventory challenges and stock taking issues, and some supplies going bad as well. But you'll be amazed to know these trillions and trillions of dollars which are getting lost, the complete inventory shrinkage, more than 96% is having involvement of insiders. You can imagine how much of impact it has. So it's not shoplifters who come from outside. That's a very minor problem. But the insiders, the employees and everybody else is such a large challenge. Similarly, if you look at any kind of fraud taking place, I'm very sure you all used to looking at the survey reports, fraud reports, even same. More than 90% of frauds, there's a clear-cut insider involved. And believe me, those 10% people who did not say there was insider involved, they lied. You cannot do a fraud unless you have the inside information. So it is almost certain that every fraud that you face, there has to be an insider involved. It is very close to 100%. That is the threat it face. I'm very sure a lot of you would have supported uniform being security professional, whether in army, police, navy, air force, or various other intelligence agencies. And I'm very sure you're aware that how sensitive it is, and how many rules, how stringent punishments are made, that at any point of time, any insider is not able to cause any devastation. So that's where it is. That's how it is. It is very, very significant. And like I said earlier, let's not demean these threat just because maybe we have not understood it enough, or we do not have data enough to crunch and say that this is what my problem is. Okay, so I think knowing a little bit about the threat, and knowing at least that what these who these insiders are, something very critical for today's discussion is what exactly is motivation of these insiders. And if you are able to understand it well, that's first control that you can also implement to manage the insider threat better. And maybe just two categories, not more than that. One, self-motivated. Number two, externally motivated. When we say self-motivated, I may further disintegrate this into two categories. One, I have a certain type of greed, I have certain type of opportunity or a need of needing more money or anything else than I have, then obviously I'm self-motivated to cause a problem, right? In this case, I can possibly do a fraud, I can sell the information, or I can do any kind of such problems. And selling the information is not only limited to a lot of time when we find the military scenarios, naval documents, Air Force documents, even paramilitary. No, selling information is more rampant in the corporate world rather than a war scenario. And most of the time, all these events go undetected. So there is a very large problem of information going out, but the biggest problem is even larger than this threat is that it goes undetected. You don't even know about it. And if one is obviously I can cause all this. The second is when I'm self sort of motivated, this motivation can also emerge in me because I get frustrated at my work. And anyone who is, let's say, getting through a hostile termination, has reported issues, showing concerns, fighting with the boss, not clicking well with the colleagues, that's your natural sort of assessment of saying that yes, this person requires some kind of observation. So one is obviously the self motivation, other is external motivation. When we talk about external motivation, that means somebody is able to influence me as an employee, as a contractor, as a ex-employee or anyone else, to cause that risk or a threat to that organization where I am working or I was working. Believe me, I will like to continue to call ex-employees as insider threat because they got knowledge to cause harmful effect on me because they were insider at a point of time. And I know it's very, very difficult to manage ex-employees, and that's the reason HR has been entrusted with this immense responsibility of ensuring the exits are smooth, and that's the reason the feedbacks are taken so that you know how exactly your organization culture is working. Because this is not something which is emerging out of a security situation. It will mostly emerge out of behavioral issues. It will emerge out of discontent with certain organizational policies, discontent with boss, which is always seen as a very, very large reason. And since they're out of the organization, these ex-employees obviously are no more governed by policies. You cannot chase them up. So obviously, what they do is very difficult to monitor further. So that's an external motivation I can get, so that once I'm motivated, I can do this uh, for various reasons, right? And when we talk about these reasons, I'll quickly just provide you certain reasons before we maybe take a pause and seek more questions and come in. So, what exactly these insiders target? Well, maximum percentage which has been found, if I may go by the definition saying property, when I say property, which it means there is some kind of economical gain being looked at. And especially if there is an external motivation, definitely it ends up being in some kind of economical gain which takes place. These gains have been found to be huge. We have been, as an organization, working on a lot of boardroom theft of information, boardroom leak cases. Often we have been able to also identify that some of the very malicious attack on data and systems are also because they were insiders or ex-employees who could pass the information about how the protection was managed. I'm very sure we all know that uh, right from the historic times, even when a fort was being designed, it was designed more from outside to inside. So you will have various obstacles even before you could reach the wall. You may even have an obstacle of a water body, and you may even throw some crocodiles in it to increase the difficulty levels. So there are all these things, and then layer by layer, people come inside, and obviously, even when you play chess, you know that when you start, or even when you continue to play, how well you wanted to protect the king, so that everybody else is fighting ahead. But that's how there should be enough layer to protect that nothing means much how much of criticality protection you're looking at. So these days, your kings are information, your kings are money, your kings are profitability, your kings are reputation, your kings are all these. So you need to protect all of them at one go. So that's the protection level which was built. And even now, when all of us security professionals look at, we often talk about tiered security, how many layers it got, how it works. But that's a problem. If you are, let's say, inside, you have already broken those tiers and you're full of energy. You not spend energy fighting those tiers because you were one of us, right? So once you find people inside, and there is a motivation, like I said, biggest problem has been seen as economic gains. Number two problem, which is very heinous, is also targeting people. More often than not, these people are managers, CEOs, HR managers, and even if you have noticed, there have been instances of specific managers being attacked, and not only by mobs. Like we have seen examples at some of the automotive factories and a lot of other locations, and even in some garment factories. These people became a mob and attacked the leadership, attacked management, attacked HR. Apart from that, there have also been attacks which are specifically well orchestrated onto a particular manager. I don't want to name companies, but some of the even largest manufacturing companies, steel companies, their CEOs, their HR heads, there have been people who have come inside with a weapon and attacked them individually. So the biggest challenge then is people, because this people impact has got a very large psychological impact on overall leadership, employees, and a lot of places, which directly is also identified as a challenge which can be linked to productivity, effectiveness, and how the culture of the organization is. Well, less these people can also cause sabotage by uh, manipulating the process, and especially in this IT world, manipulation has become very, very easy. You don't have to go to a full line and start changing things. You only need to instruct certain computers that they should start changing things. So that's how, when I talked about the virtual insider, a hacker can come inside the system and start controlling your system. It can start telling you to shut down electricity for complete city. It can even start telling your weapon systems to start firing on your own. It can start telling your aircraft that you need to fall down. So that's the ability these process and these things can have. Obviously, the next target they have is about information. Information is the king today. It's more costly than anything else. You can imagine information and its dissemination have that much power that it can decide who should be the next president of USA. Maybe if we still continue to call him the strongest man in the world, although there are some other countries which are challenging that now. So Twitter, Facebook, they have become one of the biggest tools to ensure that who picks up the strongest man in the world job. And last but not the least, reputation. Especially if you have disgruntled, frustrated employees, They will even love to target your reputation as individually or as an organization. And another thing is, even let's say if you were hit for economic crime or information, if that comes into public domain, your reputation is still getting hit as a byproduct. And especially if you're a listed company and you have shares and you have investors, reputation plays a very big role. I think quite a bit of monologue. So maybe Captain Tyagi, is there a way I take a pause and uh, will there be somebody who would like to comment additionally, or will there be any questions till now that can be taken?
Gary, while you were speaking, there were few points coming to my mind.
So,
One was, part related to ethics. You have a whole lot of employees which were recruited by you. You have given them promotion. You have given them recognition. They have reached the top level, and then suddenly you are compelled to keep monitoring them, be suspicious of their activities, and if you are not suspicious, you will never get to know if they are actually involved in any activities which are classified as insider threat. So how ethical it is for top leader to keep his top leader under surveillance, under watch all the time, and to what extent is it possible? Because a clerk can do same thing which a director can do. Today,
sure.
the information available with the director is same information which is available with his stenographer. So, entire spectrum, whole chain of hierarchy, and you need to be watchful of them. So, practicality, and first part is ethics, second part is practicality.
No, sure, sir. I think that's a great challenging solution one needs to design, and we often face with such situations very regularly. And yes, may I add just one more challenge attached to it? Ethics, practicalities also. Uh, there are continuously new laws being made. So whether even it remains legal, or let's say if you're a US based company, or let's say if you're a European company, you have GDPR, even if it is legal in India or legal in Sri Lanka and Indonesia, you being a European company can do that in Indonesia or not. So there are these ifs and buts which often come out. So coming to a possible way to look at, obviously, when we are looking at ethics and regulatory or lawful, we have to remain within that, even being risk professionals working for any corporate. Yes, we do not have the liberty to step outside our law, our company policies. If I look at in a generic manner, obviously any law or any policy will allow the risk professionals to monitor in public domain. So that is crucial. We need to understand that in case we have that will, and a lot of these things also need to be attached to a lot of other information pieces to reach a conclusion, rather than it is a start and a stop event. For example, one of the employees who resigned said, okay, I'm resigning because I am going to my hometown and I'm going to open a shop there because I don't think I want to live in this big city anymore. Okay, he resigns and it looks okay. You're going, but yes, we knew that he was one of the most critical resources and had a huge amount of information bank in his head, apart from anything else that he may carry. So one step one, we now know who are our critical people. Step two, we at least have information saying what they said while exiting. Now, step three is we need to stitch it together that we find, even on a LinkedIn or resume, or some of the friends say that he has joined our competition. And you already now come step four, that competition had made an announcement 2 weeks back that they are going to produce a product or a software or anything which is likely to beat you, right? So this becomes the fourth piece of information which joined together. I think within these four pieces, we know now the situation is alarming enough, rather than it was simplistic. So we have remained within the public domain, and we have at least found out that it is critical to us. I think at that point of time, possibly we involve our business leaders, inform them, and make a plan about it. So that's about maybe as far as the remaining ethics, ethical and remaining lawful. Practicality, yes, bit of the practicality or implementation answered within the first example that I provided. But at this time, it's important that managing insider threat is a system in place rather than brainchild of an individual who's trying to do everything. So practicality will only emerge if data of HR, of exit interview, or data of CCTV, of late going out, or data of access control, that everybody leaves by 5 p.m., and why there were three guys who have stayed two particular days till 10 p.m. If the project manager says there was a delivery timeline, yes, fine. But if project manager says there was no reason, then that's good enough for us to take the next step. So I think the practicality will come in if we are able to create a system, stitching together of data, which often in large corporates is a challenge because everybody wants to protect their domain. Everybody loves to be the king of their silos rather than be cooperating, with other departments. So practicality will come in once maybe we have a leadership buy-in to create a system, and then yes, it should be a system at place to give us the result.
Gary, Coit has already mentioned about the dilemma, and let me share a few lines
So
on the lighter note. शायर ने कहा कि मुझे तो अपनों ने मारा, औरों में कहाँ दम था, मेरी कश्ती वहीं डूबी जहां पानी जरा कम था, तो मुझे अपनों ने ही मारा. Insider threat is all about being vulnerable from your own people. Every member of your organization, of your team, is potential threat. You have mentioned about many things. You mentioned about sabotage. You mentioned about fraud and intellectual property theft, espionage. All these are manifestation of insider threats. With such wide range of threats, how actually you get down to addressing each of them and make a very comprehensive composite security plan?
no, sure. Thank you, sir. I think maybe that's what is one of the challenges which even people till all levels are struggling. And I may also say that even yes, when we talk about espionage and other details, I even talk about large assassinations don't take place without insider threat. Well, whether we talk about assassination of Indira Gandhi, or who was a prime minister, or even I do not know how many people are used to Afghanistan. I had the privilege of serving there with United Nations. So even Masood, he was not beaten by Russians. He was resisting them all this while. But finally, how they assassinated him was because they could make friends with the PR guy, went inside to do an interview, and they carried bomb in the camera. So whether it's a heinous terrorism, assassination, or minor money being done, insiders are a big challenge. And maybe if I request you, sir, I'll like to show a couple of slides, maybe not for too long, but very briefly, just to provide some indications on how it can be done. Yeah. Thank you, sir. So I think as of now, like I mentioned, we should be able to know that where it can hurt us more, which are the insiders I really should be worried about. For example, when we do even background checks, gone is the era when everybody used to just paint the complete background check profile with one color. Now we know that for junior staff we need to do these checks, for senior staff this. For example, if you're checking housekeeping, means why will you waste money checking his or her educational qualification? They claim themselves to be engineers, let them be. What you need to worry about is how fairly they can do the job, and what is the ethics and integrity level. That's what you generally focus upon. Moment you go to junior level employees, you start doing few things. Moment you're talking about technical people, yes, you talk about the degrees. Moment you're talking about the CEOs and leaders, you even talk about their own reputations, how they're seen in the industry. So if that is how you become more progressive in nature, and you become more intelligent to handle background checks, I think even when it comes to insider, which is far more complex, we need to know that where should we focus. It's not possible to focus 100% on 100%. So there's the reason we need to at least have a sifting mechanism. So what's there on the screen as of now is, if you look at how much of technical expertise that particular insider has and how much of internal process knowledge the insider gains while working at the organization, right? So obviously, if the technical expertise is low, internal process. Now, maybe let me say that we are talking about a particular large IT company. I'm just giving example. Means it can happen to anyone, but let's say large IT company, which is basically they're very large because they have a strong IPR, their internal process, software, servers, everything else. So if you're talking about a housekeeping guy who has hardly got any technical expertise and doesn't know internal process very well either, which means on the low side. So he's a insignificant insider threat as far as my IPR and my business is concerned, because possibly the damage that can be caused can be some bit of theft and other details, which my security program already is also taking care of it. Not that we're ignoring these guys. Our security program is taking care of these guys. But let's say moment we have somebody who's got internal process is known hugely, but technical expertise is still low. So maybe we call them, they are critical and significant. And slowly means if you keep going up the chain, once you reach a stage of great technical expertise and they know internal process very well, that's your greatest threat. And if you are even an organization of 100,000 people, on the left top category, you will not have more than 20 to 25. If there are more than those number of people, then possibly even your way of handling of business or way of handling criticality is not great. Like, for example, till today, even the Coke employees don't know what is Coke formula. Pepsi employees don't know what is Pepsi formula. So that's, and I'm very sure even there are hundreds of thousand people working for Google, but they don't know what is the logarithm, right? So if you are there at a minor piece, you leave and you do something else, that's okay. If you're in Microsoft, you might be making a very small part of one of the softwares, and overall it gets sold, but you don't have code for the complete software to everyone, right? So that's where we need to first of all identify which is my high threat area, so that I'm able to focus there and I'm able to even plan my mitigations in a customized manner. Otherwise, my mitigation plan can be so expensive, so wide, and so cumbersome that I'll not be effective, or my leadership will not let me implement that at all. So our plans have to be very smart. That is one thing which I may take liberty of going outside the preview of the discussion. But a lot of time we risk professionals, first of all, do not think about business so much. Believe me, while it's a job to do risk security investigations, but I believe you need to think about business more and more, and then do your risk security and investigations. So that's a challenge already existing. Secondly, we need to be very smart in terms of how much is going to cost and how much returns is going to come back with. So these are two crucial things. So even if you make an insider management program, you need to worry about that as well. Because just going to next slide, this insider management program can really sort of take huge amount of effort in terms of what all you need to do. So this is just one indicative way to handle it. Yes, you can find your own way, but few of the points which I've mentioned here, I'll just quickly cover, and then maybe we can see questions. So if you're looking at the blue arrows right outside, it starts from threat assessment. So threat assessment, you need to know where are your assets, and then how those assets can be damaged. Your assets can be whether IPR, even leader. I give this example even by giving a name, but believe me, it is a very pertinent example. If you talk about Reliance, the biggest asset is Mukesh Ambani. The way his vision and leadership and his idea and thought process had driven the company, if Mukesh Ambani is not available, even if you put 200 other professionals to do that job, maybe Reliance will not be Reliance what they are, right? So that's the reason. Even if you look at countries, well, that's the reason Prime Minister is one of the biggest and needs to be protected. USA president, one of the biggest asset that needs to be protected. Chinese premier, biggest. So that's important. Yes, in a different setup, when maybe you are, let's say, looking at a company which is more on IPR. For example, let's say, again, going back to Coke and Pepsi. While I do agree, every CEO is important and they are critical and they definitely hold huge amount of impact on the overall internal as well as external environment. But yes, they are more IPR driven company. Look at pharma companies. While these CEOs do come in and do increase the profitability, but they're IPR driven companies. If the IPR is lost, that's where they start losing maximum amount of strength what the company had. So you need to do your threat assessment. What is exactly I'm holding and which side the threat can come in and how exactly I should be prepared. So that is maybe one thing which we should be ready to do. And then if you look some of the other points that were mentioned, they are primarily linked to how exactly you need to start getting your program identify and start mitigating. Okay, so now few of the things, let's say, uh, I do not talk about least privilege access, I really talk about progressive access theory. If you look at the dark circle, it says progressive access theory. Now what does exactly progressive access theory means? It means that, let's say, even if I'm hiring somebody who's supposed to handle my server, I do not want this person to start reaching my server room on day one. I know it's challenging. People will say it can be operationally mind-boggling, but if your servers are your assets that can make or break a company, I will not let a new hire reach my servers on day one. Let that person be hired, be in the company. I see more of the person. I generate further trust. I see that person is now capable enough to reach my server. My server might be the seventh tier of security, but since a new hire has come in, straightway can jump to seventh tier of security. I'm not very happy with that situation. And believe me, this may not be done for everybody, but at least, like we said, where is your criticality? Do that. Progressive access theory. We'll give you progressive access. You will become one of us every next day. I'm very sure a lot of you who have worked in intelligence programs and intelligence agencies. You're not the top spy on day one. You're not even possibly given the job of picking up teacups to serve to others because we don't know what you can do. So it takes time. Let it be a progressive access theory. Let it be something which will happen with time. So that's something which I do want people to think about it. Then behavioral assessment. Now this behavioral assessment can be done in many ways, and that's where the immediate supervisors and managers come into play. They should have a channel. If they find something unique, they find something awkward, they find something malicious, they should be freely able to report that without having the trouble of saying whom to report, without having the trouble of saying that the person can be biased, without having the trouble of when do I report. There has to be a reporting mechanism. When I see something problematic, something which is out of turn, I should be able to just do that. I'm very sure you will recall a few years back, one of the ISIS Twitter handlers was working in an IT company in India. And he used to come to office and go back every day. And post he was identified, everybody said he was not talking to anyone. He was most malicious guy I could ever see. He was violent. He was extremist. Well, if the opportunity existed that this could have been told beforehand, very, very discreetly, I think we would have got that danger closed maybe a year or two back rather than waiting for that particular day when something else actually identified it. And believe me, the identification was through IP address because he made a mistake of not using the VPN that day. And everybody around him knew there is something wrong, but nobody had a channel to report, and everybody is scared to report as well. So that is something we need to see. And behavioral assessment should also be, in some way or the other, plugged into your appreciation charts, plugged into your HR processes. And that's the reason I call for human resource intelligence network. And this human resource intelligence network doesn't mean HR professional in isolation. This means that everybody who's on floor is able to work for us in terms of intelligence reporting. Risk-based vetting, we already discussed, and it's a very critical point because it's also links to that. If you're bringing somebody into a high risk zone, high critical area, you need to do more and more background checks. You need to do more and more vetting on that. Enhanced IT monitoring. I will like to call this enhanced IT monitoring also along with enhanced ability of CCTV cameras to notice behaviors. So there is huge amount of logarithm being done on this subject. In fact, recently we had a very great discussion and certain work being done, uh, even in terms of teaching. So if there are 20 people in the classroom and there is one teacher who's teaching, and the camera will be able to say if there were three guys who were not attentive enough, then automatic report can go to their home and parents or whosoever saying these three guys don't listen to teacher in the class. Or maybe if there is one topic when all 20 guys or maybe 15 guys were like, oof, bad teacher, right? That can also generate a feedback for teacher that this topic, when you teach, nobody's interested what you're saying. So go and improve. So behavioral techniques, I'm thinking, although I'm very sure some of you professionals may have seen that there is a huge debate going about even the facial recognition. There is a school in US which said, okay, we want to do facial recognition. There were PIL filed. So court has said stop it as of now because we want to see how will you implement, what all you will do with the data and stuff like that. So that's an ongoing discussion. But yes, the world has gone beyond even a facial recognition in normal and also doing behavioral recognition. So that is a possibility. And whenever you have this behavioral recognition with IT monitoring, because there was a behavior which gave a pattern while the CCTV noticed the person was coming inside. And moment I log in, and believe me, the IT world has a great advantage that everything is monitored. Moment I log in every day, actually I do certain things, but now all of a sudden I'm revising a topic which says how to blast a bomb, or maybe I'm doing how to use tap as a weapon, or I'm doing Google of something which is again way to hit with pen so the other person can be made unconscious. So these things coming together, like I had said earlier, let there be a system, let there be feedback coming from multiple channels, right? And at the same time, while you're identifying, you also need to make jobs difficult for these guys, and you need to ensure that you are able to get certain protection and response. So again, devise critical info shields and do a counterintelligence program. When I say critical info shield, because something which is more critical, give it more security. Let there be higher monitoring there. Let there be higher surveillance there. And when I talk about counterintelligence program, well, it is a reality that anything that takes place is well planned, rehearsed, and it doesn't happen by error or by chance, whether it's a terrorist attack or a theft or anything like that. So that's the reason one of the biggest force we have, and unfortunately we do not do this training to them, is making them understand counterintelligence programs. So if your guards are able to understand this, and if you're able to train even the supervisors in such a program that they should be able to do some very discreet defensive observations and pass it on, it's great. And believe me, we do such programs more often these days than the previous time because people have understood that. So these are things which are important. I think I'll take a pause again and check if there are any questions or comments, and then maybe just 5 more minutes before my possible thoughts are going to say that's it.
Gary, a question and a comment altogether. It comes
Sure.
from Bangalore,
Sure.
and the viewer has requested not to share identity.
One of the
Probably
insiders.
for the reason that he himself might be involved in same kind of mitigation process. He mentioned that when you talk about threat mitigation, there is a concept and practice which is referred as profiling. You have mentioned not in as many words, not mentioning profiling exactly, but what you referred was actually can be categorized as profiling. This is found to be something which is coming with a lot of attitude and aptitude. Not everyone is capable, like intelligence collection, not everyone is capable of doing accurate profiling. How scientific and how successful this process would be, and how people can get training on profiling. So that is the whole question
Sure.
and comment.
Sure. No, this is a great question. Actually, like I said, I just need those last 5 minutes. So my comments of those last 5 minutes will be triggered by this question. So I will try to include answer to this and also what I was going to say later. So I will again continue to say there should be a system in place, and this profiling actually has to be combination of many profiles. What I mean here is access control logs and the pattern. That's one profile. CCTV monitoring, that's another profile. Behavioral pattern, that's another. Somebody reporting against this, that's another. So this final profile actually need to have so many sections that it doesn't ends up call of one individual only. And you need to have the person so well trained that it has to be eyes of James Bond, that if he or she is seen once, x-ray is known and what exactly is happening. So that's our system at place. While this profiling angle is very important, and this can help right guards at the main entry door to HR reacting and discussing things with employees or even supervisors, or even, let's say, there is no harm in having uh, silent observation professionals within the organization who are actually specialists of this. Because rather than to create so many specialists, well, you definitely can have these silent observation specialists even imported and doing their job as an expert, and they can do also train the trainer program and other stuff, and continuously. But now coming to how this profiling must be utilized. First, I want to say while it's important, but I do not want to give so much significance to one person knowing this profiling skill. I want to streamline into a system and a lot of people giving me input. So I want to my profiling to be combination of 5, 6, 7, 10 profiles. And how I need to do this. For example, I may have a system which says, here is one point which will give me inputs of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, whatever that mechanism we can. So we have worked on various quantifying it. It doesn't happen to be calling somebody a thief and calling somebody a terrorist or calling somebody a clean guy. No, it's about identifying, and it's about making it objective. For example, if my CCTV has got a behavioral analysis or anything like those, I may have a 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It brings it to 3. Then access control wise, okay, I had this challenge when somebody has gone so late for 2 nights that it automatically triggered 4, right? And similarly, maybe boss said something because there was a appraisal and the person not done well. I had a big argument and all. That brings another component. So all these components, when they come in, for example, let's say if I'm just making the scale 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and if I say my 1 and 2 are total green, I am not worried. My 3 and 4 are yellow, and my 5 becomes red. So let's say a lot of these 3s and 4s, when they have come in, they may show my score is 3.5. So my profile score is 3.5. That makes me fall into a yellow category, which means some further work is required, either to call this person clean, go back to green, or to call this person a red and needs to be monitored. So this 3.5 has got a lot of components. These multiple inputs have come to me, and I will prefer to call this as a profile rather than only possibly the question which says the individual profiling of looking at people and traditional way of RAWs and ISIs. So that is only one component here, but multiple components come in. So I have these 3 lights: red, yellow, green. Somebody coming in yellow. Now it's time for me to step out of my chair, look at some of this data, talk to certain people, verify what's going on. If I'm convinced it's all good, it goes back to green. I wipe it off. But if I know there is something more, that's where I trigger some public data monitoring, some profile monitoring, looking at some of the open Facebook profiles, or even talking to some friends, saying, is he okay? I just wanted to check how is he doing, and we get an answer, he's 210, so whatever. Then I push him to red, and I maybe it doesn't mean I continue to do only surveillance. HR maybe told to invite this person to sit over table and discuss what is going on. Because I have certain data, he comes to the table, he provides false information, he lies, then I know we are in trouble. There is something wrong. But he says, this is my tension, this is what is going on, it matches with our data. I say, okay, this is a natural human issue which he's facing. I take him back to green. So profile, combination of multiple profiles, every profile able to contribute objectively, able to reach whether you like 3 lights or you can have 5 lights or 10 scoring mechanism, whatever that may suit the organization. So maybe that's where my answer is. Not only banking so much on one profile, rather creating so many profiles which end up stitching together as one.
So, Gary, we are into 51 minutes into discussion. You have covered the whole subject very comprehensively. Few questions remain, but these are only to be thought of, contemplated, and maybe answers will be uh, found within security fraternity only. One is related to training on profiling. That is one thing, and I know that many good agencies undertake such training because it is expert's job. What all is required for person who is involved in profiling needs to be uh, fine tuned, and even the skills which are required to be identified whether these are present in a person or not. So that is part of profiling. Another thing is that for the entire spectrum of threats under broadly categorized under insider threats, they themselves into different specific subjects to be dealt with, and training is required. When you talk about fraud investigation, when you talk about how to identify potential saboteur, when you talk about financial frauds and forensic related to accounting, these are very specific specialized areas, and agencies are there who conduct training. One of the agency is yours only. Without sounding it to be focusing on what you are doing with the IIRIS, and you have not even mentioned about the kind of activities your company is involved. These are the kind of professional ethics and standards we really appreciate in International Council of Security and Safety Management. You are responsible and very respected part of it. Gary, now I request you to think about next subject for similar discussion. Think about it, and maybe at appropriate time we'll be once again sharing your input on that subject. And that subject is active shooter. You are well-trained professionals, and you conduct specialized, highly specialized training programs. I do not want you to share that part which is part of revenue generation for you, but then I surely would like you to discuss what is exactly active shooter would be, and what are the indicators for which security professionals are required to be fine-tuned. How to mitigate that situation is your part of training programs which are highly acclaimed, but I would like you to mention about various indicators and touch as a concept this subject of active shooter. You
Sure,
have
sir.
been very thankful, thankfully useful, and eminently qualified on this subject. I would like
Sure.
you to make very short, crisp closing comment.
Sure, sir. Thank you so much. And so you did notice that I was not being self-congratulatory about Iris Consulting and what all we do. But yes, a lot of things we do. But at the same time, uh, at least the vision we share along with you is revenues are less important. Making all of us safe is more important. So when it comes to active shooters, sir, no problems. We love to share exact training program which we generate revenue upon. but for all the fraternity colleagues here. So we are happy to run the same program without a cost. That's at least our basic duty towards IIRIS and your vision. Maybe one comment which I would like to give about insider threat. Uh, it's a request to start with, and then a comment. I do want professionals to start becoming active about this threat. Believe me, there are a lot of professionals who don't see this threat even. And believe me, this is one of the biggest threat. And even any business leader you walk up to, they have some concern or the other about one insider or something else, or employee or an IPR or whatever that may mean. So that's where we need to align ourselves better to our businesses, our leaders, and become more oriented to insider threat. That's my request. And maybe one comment: any insider threat can be detected in time or can also be investigated later to identify the culprit. It's just the effort that we need to place. Believe me, 100% of it. Now it's your choice. Would you like to detect it earlier with your professional caliber, or like to find it out later and cry about it? That's all, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Garry, and thank you, viewers. Remain tuned in for next equally important discussion. Subscribe to the channel. You get the notification for our forthcoming discussion. Garry, for you, we'll be once again together for equally important discussion, maybe some other day, some other time. And may you remain very happy, healthy, and cheerful. You have been immensely useful for security fraternity. And together, let's professionalize the professionals. Thank you.